When I was 15, my parents kicked me out so my older sister could have her own room. When I asked where I was supposed to go, Mom just smirked and said, "Figure out darky." That was 7 months ago. Now they're both begging me to forgive them. My dad's black and my mom's white. I look a lot darker while my sister Kayla looks way lighter. That difference has shaped my whole life. Even though dad's black, he's got this deep colorism thing against darker skin and mom's straight up racist. Dad's the only one she gives a pass to. Kayla and I are just 2 years apart, but our lives growing up couldn't have been more different. Every one of her birthdays came with a cake and a whole week of parties. Mine, just another day on the calendar. But Kayla never treated me the way they did. When she turned 9 and knew our parents wouldn't do a thing for me, she asked if we could celebrate her birthday on my day. They agreed, and when it came, she let me pick who to invite. When it was time for cake, she distracted them and had everyone sing happy birthday to me. That moment meant everything. Once, when she got C's and I got B's, she knew they'd blow up at me for not getting A's. So she begged them not to hurt me, saying she couldn't stand violence, and they just pinched me a few times instead. So even though my parents basically saw me as a cotton picker, I still felt lucky because Kayla had my back. Until the day she didn't. Her 17th birthday changed everything. I woke up to my mom, dad, and the whole family tossing my stuff into boxes. Your sister said all she wants for her birthday is her own room. Sorry. Dad said when I asked what was happening. My stomach dropped. I asked where I was supposed to go. There weren't any other rooms. Mom cut in, "I don't know, you've got friends and family. Figure it out, darky." My eyes stung, and I looked at Kayla, but she wouldn't meet my gaze. She was stiff as stone. After half an hour of begging and crying, I finally realized it wasn't some sick joke. I started sobbing so hard my chest hurt, because the one person I thought I could count on had turned her back on me. Even as I curled up on the floor, rocking in pain, they just kept packing. Eventually, something in me went numb. I walked out and called the only person I trusted, my aunt on dad's side. After Kayla's betrayal, I had no clue what she'd say, but she immediately told me I could stay with her for as long as I needed. I skipped breakfast that morning, didn't even give Kayla her present, just grabbed the boxes, called an Uber, and left. On the way, Kayla's name lit up my screen. I hated seeing it, but I still answered. "I'm so sorry, please don't hate me." My brows tightened as I went quiet. "Are you alone right now?" she asked. I said yes. She didn't reply, just started a FaceTime and held up a pregnancy test with 2 pink lines. It was hers. I froze. "Lila, I'm pregnant." She whispered that she didn't want Mom and Dad to know yet, that I understood how they were, and that she wanted me gone before they found out. I remember when she came home once with a hickey, and my parents screamed at me for nearly an hour, blaming me for being a bad influence. I got it. "Kayla, what do you want me to do?" I asked. She said to reach out to Aunt Bonnie. Right then, I heard Mom and Dad coming upstairs singing "Happy Birthday." So I hung up. My head was spinning. Part of me was relieved Kayla still cared, but mostly I was scared. When I got to Aunt Bonnie's, my stomach twisted as she opened the door with a big smile and hugged me tight. "I'm so glad you came." I never told her what happened, and clearly, my parents hadn't either. We were making small talk when it just slipped out. "My parents are racist, and my sister's pregnant." She laughed, thinking I was kidding, until I broke down crying. The boxes were already inside, so she let me in and listened while I poured everything out. I made her promise not to tell my parents, and she said she wouldn't. I spent the next hour unloading all of it, the racism, the favoritism, being kicked out. She told me I'd be safe there, and held me as I cried myself to sleep. I didn't know it then, but Aunt Bonnie was about to make my parents pay. Our lives were about to change forever. The next morning, I woke up on her couch, dazed, not sure where I was. Then it hit me, getting kicked out, Kayla's pregnancy, all of it. My eyes were puffy from crying and my back ached from the couch. I checked my phone. 3 missed calls from Kayla, none from my parents. Not surprising, but it still hurt. I heard Aunt Bonnie in the kitchen cooking breakfast, and the smell of bacon and eggs filled the place. My stomach growled. I hadn't eaten since lunch yesterday. "Good morning, sleepyhead," Aunt Bonnie said as I dragged myself into the kitchen. She looked like she'd already been awake for ages. "I made you some breakfast. Eat up, we've got a lot to talk about." I sat down at her little kitchen table and started eating. The food tasted incredible, or maybe I was just starving. Either way, I devoured it while Aunt Bonnie sat across from me, sipping her coffee. "I've been thinking about everything you told me," she said once I'd gotten through half my plate. "And I need to ask you something important. Has your dad ever hit you?" I nearly choked on my orange juice. No one had ever asked me that so straight before. Not like, punch me or anything. I muttered, just some slaps, pinches, that kind of thing. Aunt Bonnie's expression turned serious. That's still abuse, Lila. And the emotional stuff, the way they treat you different from Kayla, that's abuse too. I stared down at my plate. Hearing someone actually say it out loud hit differently. I'd always known something was off about how my parents treated me. But hearing it called abuse made me feel both seen and strangely embarrassed. I'm calling your parents after breakfast, she said. First, to tell them you're staying with me for now. Second, to let them know I'm aware of how they've been treating you. My heart started pounding. But what about Kayla? If you tell them you know everything, they'll figure out I told you about the pregnancy. I won't mention the pregnancy, Aunt Bonnie promised. That's Kayla's news to share when she's ready. But the rest, they need to know. After breakfast, I called Kayla while Aunt Bonnie was cleaning up. She picked up right away, sounding totally panicked. Are you okay? Where are you? Did Aunt Bonnie let you stay? The questions came nonstop. I told her I was fine and staying at Aunt Bonnie's place. She sounded relieved but still tense. I asked how she was, and if our parents suspected anything. They don't suspect a thing, Kayla said. They're too busy redecorating my room now that it's all mine. She sounded guilty saying it. Lila, I'm so sorry. I should have figured something else out. I wasn't done being hurt, but I got why she did it. It's okay, I said. But Kayla, what's your plan? You can't hide a pregnancy forever. Kayla started crying quietly. I don't know. I'm scared to tell them. You know how they'll react. I knew exactly how they'd react. They'd somehow blame me even though I had nothing to do with it. They'd shame Kayla but end up forgiving her. They'd make everything worse. What about the father? I asked. Is he in the picture? It's Tyler, Kayla said. You know, the guy from my chem class? His parents are super strict about religion. If they find out, he's done for. So are we. Tyler Williams. I kinda knew him. Tall, quiet, played baseball. Not the type I ever pictured Kayla secretly seeing. Have you thought about what you're gonna do? I asked softly. Like, do you want to keep it or? I don't know yet, Kayla said. I just need time to think. Can you ask Aunt Bonnie if she'll help me? Maybe I can come over and we can talk. I told her I'd ask Aunt Bonnie and to just hang in there. The second we hung up, I heard Aunt Bonnie's voice from the living room. She was clearly yelling at someone. I couldn't catch every word, but it sounded like my parents were on the other end. I sat on the edge of the bed in her guest room, where my boxes were stacked. Part of me wanted to listen, but part of me didn't want to know. After what felt like forever, everything went quiet. Then Aunt Bonnie showed up at my door. Well, I just had a lovely chat with your dad, she said, her tone dripping sarcasm. He says they didn't throw you out, just thought maybe you should stay with friends for a bit. I laughed. Sure, right. They literally boxed up my life. I know, she said. They've always been good at twisting things, but you're staying here for now. We'll have a family talk soon about how they've been treating you. My stomach sank. A family talk. With them? Do we have to? Eventually. Yeah, she said. But not right away. Let's just get you settled first. And I have a feeling there's something you wanted to ask me? I nodded. Kayla wants to know if she can come over to talk to you. About, her situation. Aunt Bonnie smiled. Of course she can. Tell her to stop by after school tomorrow. I'll be home early. The rest of the day felt weird but kinda nice. Aunt Bonnie helped me unpack. Her spare room was small, but way better than sharing with Kayla. I had my own desk, a big bed, and real privacy. She even took me shopping for stuff to make it feel more mine. I kept checking my phone the whole time. Nothing from my parents. Not even a you okay? Or we miss you. Just silence. Kayla texted that she'd come over at 4 tomorrow to talk to Aunt Bonnie. That night, we ordered pizza and watched movies on the couch. It actually felt normal. It felt like what normal families must do all the time. No tension. No worrying about being a problem just for existing. Just hanging out and enjoying each other's company. Aunt Bonnie said during a quiet moment, I always wanted kids of my own. Never worked out that way. But having you here, it's nice. I didn't really know how to respond, so I just smiled and kept watching the movie. Still, this warm feeling spread through my chest. For the first time in forever, I fell asleep actually feeling safe. The next morning was Tuesday. Aunt Bonnie had to work, but she left me a key and told me to make myself comfortable. I spent the morning wandering around her place and the afternoon catching up on some homework I'd brought. Around 3:30, I started to get nervous about Kayla coming over. She arrived right at 4, looking anxious but relieved to see me. We hugged for a while at the door before I brought her inside. This place is nice, she said. glancing around. Aunt Bonnie's not home yet. She should be here any minute, I said. Want some water or something? She nodded and followed me to the kitchen. She looked pale and exhausted, like she hadn't slept much. We sat at the table in awkward silence for a few minutes before she finally said, Mom and Dad think I'm at debate practice. They don't know yet, but Mom said something this morning about me gaining weight. I almost freaked out. Before I could say anything, we heard keys at the door. Aunt Bonnie came in still dressed from work, holding a grocery bag. Her face brightened when she saw Kayla. There's my other niece, she said warmly, setting down the bag to hug her. Kayla broke down, crying the moment Aunt Bonnie's arms wrapped around her. The next hour was heavy. Kayla told her everything. About Tyler, about being 8 weeks pregnant, about how scared she was our parents would find out. Aunt Bonnie just listened, asking questions but never judging. Have you decided what you want to do? She asked softly. Kayla shook her head. I don't know. I'm only 16. I'm supposed to go to college next year, but I don't know if I could go through with an abortion. She started crying again. An adoption? I don't know. You have options, Aunt Bonnie said, and time to figure it out. But first, you need to see a doctor to make sure everything's okay. I can go with you if you want. Kayla nodded, wiping her face. Could you? I'm scared to go alone, and I can't ask Mom. Of course, Aunt Bonnie said. And Kayla, whatever you choose, I've got your back. Even if your folks don't. Kayla looked up at me, eyes still watery. I'm so sorry about what happened, Lila. I freaked out. I thought if they found out while you were still there. It's fine, I said, and this time I meant it. I get it. Honestly, it's better here anyway. After Kayla left, promising to text us about booking a doctor's visit, I helped Aunt Bonnie make dinner. My thoughts were racing over everything going on. Kayla being pregnant, me living here now, and the talk Aunt Bonnie was planning with my parents. Aunt Bonnie, I said while chopping veggies. What's gonna happen when they find out about Kayla? She exhaled. No clue, sweetie, but we'll handle it together, all three of us. The next week was shockingly calm. I got used to life at Aunt Bonnie's. She'd wake me up for school, drop me off on her way to work, and pick me up later. We'd cook dinner, watch TV, and just talk. She asked about my hobbies, my friends, my classes, all the stuff parents should care about, but mine never did. Kayla stopped by a few afternoons after school, pretending it was for debate team research. Aunt Bonnie took her to the doctor, confirming she was about 9 weeks along. Kayla still hadn't decided what to do, but at least she was getting proper care now. My parents? Nothing. Not one call, or text to see how I was. Kayla said they barely mentioned me, like I didn't even exist. It stung, but also proved what I'd always known. They didn't love me the way parents should love their kids. Then Friday night, everything exploded. Kayla called, freaking out. Mom found my prenatal vitamins, she said, voice trembling. She noticed I'd gained weight. She knows Lila. She knows I'm pregnant. My stomach dropped. What happened? What did she say? She lost it, Kayla cried. Yelled about how I ruined my life, how no college would take me now, how I embarrassed the family. Then Dad got home and went off too. I put her on speaker for Aunt Bonnie. Are you safe? Aunt Bonnie asked. I'm in my room with the door locked, Kayla said. They're pounding on it, telling me to come out and face the consequences. I'm scared. Aunt Bonnie grabbed her keys. We're coming. Pack essentials. You can stay with us. The drive to my parents' place was tense. Aunt Bonnie drove like she was on a mission, gripping the wheel tight. I sat there texting Kayla where we were, but she stopped replying and my heart was pounding. When we pulled into the driveway, I felt sick. I hadn't been there since they threw me out. The porch light was on, and both their cars were parked out front. Aunt Bonnie parked and told me, stay in the car. No way, I said. Kayla is my sister. I'm coming with you. She hesitated but finally agreed, and we walked up to the porch. The yelling inside stopped as soon as we rang the doorbell. Seconds later, Dad swung the door open, his face flipping from fury to surprise to a fake grin when he saw Aunt Bonnie. Bonnie, what a surprise, he said, pretending not to see me. What brings you by so late? Cut it out, Marcus, Aunt Bonnie said sharply. We're here for Kayla. She called us. Mom showed up behind him, her face puffy and red from crying or screaming, maybe both. This is a family issue, Bonnie. You shouldn't be here. I am family, Aunt Bonnie snapped. And so is Lila, though you've clearly forgotten that. Where's Kayla? In her room, throwing a teenage fit. Dad said, dismissive. She'll come out when she's ready to talk about her options like an adult. The word options made my stomach twist. I knew exactly what he meant. I'll get her, I said, already heading for the stairs. Mom stepped in front of me. You don't live here anymore, Lila. You can't just move, Aunt Bonnie ordered, her voice firm enough to make Mom actually step aside. I rushed upstairs to Kayla's room, my old one too, and knocked. Kayla, it's me. Open up. The door cracked and her tear-streaked face appeared. When she saw it was me, she threw the door wide and clung to me. Thank God you're here, she said. They've lost it. Dad says I have to get an abortion or he's kicking me out. Mom keeps crying about what people at church will think. Pack your stuff, I told her. You're staying with me and Aunt Bonnie. Kayla nodded and started stuffing clothes into a duffel. I grabbed what she missed, her charger, her favorite hoodie, the stuffed bear she once gave me that somehow survived when they trashed my things. When we came downstairs, our parents were still arguing with Aunt Bonnie. You can't just take her, Mom said. She's 16, still a minor. Watch me, Aunt Bonnie said. Unless you want CPS hearing about how you've treated your daughters, I'd move. Dad's face turned crimson. Is that a threat? You've got no proof. I've got Lila's word, Aunt Bonnie said evenly. And now I've got evidence you're trying to force Kayla into something against her will. You really want to test me on that, Marcus? My parents looked at each other, and for the first time ever, I saw real fear in their eyes. When she turns 18, Kayla can make her own choices, my mom said, switching her tone. Until then, she's staying here where we can look after her. Look after her the way you looked after me? I snapped. By treating her like trash if she doesn't do what you want. My dad finally looked up, glaring. You don't know what you're saying. We've always taken care of you both. Giving food and a roof doesn't mean love, I shot back. You never cared about me. And now that Kayla's made a choice you hate, you're doing the same thing to her. Kayla stepped forward, gripping her bag. I'm going with Aunt Bonnie and Lila. I'll come back when you're ready to support me no matter what I decide about my baby. My mom started crying again, but it felt fake instead of sad. Kayla, please. Think about your future. I am thinking about my future, Kayla said, steady and sure. And right now it's not here. We left the house together, my parents too stunned to move. As we drove off, I glanced back and saw them in the doorway, watching. They looked smaller, weaker. Nothing like the powerful figures I used to fear. The next few days were weird but peaceful. Kayla took my bed, and I crashed on the pull-out couch. Aunt Bonnie's tiny apartment felt packed but cozy, safer than our parents' house ever did. For 2 days, Mom and Dad blew up Kayla's phone, switching between angry threats and desperate begging. She finally turned it off. They never called me once. On the 3rd day, I was alone while Aunt Bonnie worked and Kayla went to her doctor's appointment. The doorbell rang, and when I peeked through the hole, my heart almost stopped. My parents were there. I called Aunt Bonnie fast. They're here, I whispered. Mom and Dad are at the door. Don't let them in, she said sharply. I'm leaving work now. I'll be there in 20 minutes. The bell rang again, then pounding. Lila, we know you're in there. My dad yelled. Open this door now. I froze, praying they'd go away. They didn't. Minutes later, I heard a key turning. The door swung open. My dad stood there, holding a key. Aunt Bonnie gave us a spare when she went on vacation, he said, his voice suddenly calm. When my mom showed up saying it was an emergency about Kayla's plants and mail, I immediately stepped back. This isn't an emergency. You need to leave. She walked right in anyway, glancing around. Where's Kayla? We need to talk to her. She's not here, I said honestly. I already called Aunt Bonnie. She's heading back. My dad sighed. Lila, this has gone far enough. You've made your point. But Kayla needs to come home now. She's still a minor. And what Bonnie is doing could be considered kidnapping. She didn't kidnap anyone, I snapped. Kayla left because you were trying to make her get an abortion. We weren't forcing her. My mom insisted. Though she couldn't even meet my eyes. We were just trying to help her understand the right decision. The right decision according to who? You. I was furious. It's her body. Her baby. Her choice. My dad stepped toward me, and I instinctively backed up. Something flickered in his eyes. Hurt. Maybe. That I was afraid of him. Good. He deserved it. This isn't about you, he said. You always make everything about yourself. I couldn't believe it. Are you serious? You threw me out during Kayla's birthday, treated me like I didn't exist my whole life, and now you're saying I make everything about me? Before they could answer, the door burst open. Aunt Bonnie stood there, fuming. and behind her was Kayla, pale and shocked to see them. "Get out of my apartment," Aunt Bonnie said coldly. "Not without Kayla," my dad said, turning to her. "Come on, Kayla. This has gone far enough. Come home." Kayla stepped beside me and Bonnie. "I'm not going anywhere with you. Not until you accept that this is my decision." My mom started crying again. "Kayla, please. We just want what's best for you." "No, you want what's easiest for you," Kayla shot back. "What's best for your image? You don't care what I want." "That's not true," my dad argued. "We love you." "Like you love Lila?" Kayla asked sharply. That shut them up. They looked between me and each other, speechless. Aunt Bonnie stepped closer. I figured it was finally time for that family talk I'd been hinting at. "Sit down, both of you," she said, motioning toward the couch. To my surprise, my parents actually sat. Maybe Aunt Bonnie's tone stunned them, or maybe they finally sensed things were serious. Either way, we spent the next 2 hours talking. Really talking. Kayla opened up about how scared she was when she found out she was pregnant, how she already knew her parents would lose it. I told them how their treatment shaped my whole life. The birthdays, the report cards, that never-ending feeling of being second best. Aunt Bonnie added her view as someone who'd seen their behavior for years and stayed quiet. Something she now wished she hadn't done. My parents mostly listened, trying to justify themselves a couple of times but getting shut down fast. By the end, my mom was crying for real, not her usual fake tears. My dad looked like he'd aged a decade in one afternoon. "I didn't realize," he finally said, voice rough. "I didn't see what we were doing." "Bull," Aunt Bonnie shot back. "You saw. You just didn't care. The question is whether you care now." My mom looked at me through tears. "Lila, I'm so sorry. We've been terrible parents to you." It was the first real apology I'd ever heard from her. I didn't know how to handle it. Part of me wanted to forgive right away, to finally have the parents I'd always wanted. Another part wanted to tell them to screw off. "Sorry doesn't fix 16 years, I said at last. "But it's a start." The focus shifted to Kayla and her pregnancy. Our parents still weren't happy, but they stopped pushing abortion. Instead, they actually listened as Kayla talked through her choices, keeping the baby, adoption, or ending it, and her fears about each one. When they left, nothing was settled, but something felt different. They promised to respect whatever Kayla decided and invited us home, saying they'd understand if we stayed with Aunt Bonnie instead. When she closed the door, the three of us dropped onto the couch, drained. "Do you think they meant it?" Kayla asked quietly. "About supporting? I don't know," Aunt Bonnie said. "People don't change overnight, but maybe they're starting to see what they've done." I wasn't sure. One deep talk couldn't erase years of hurt, but for the first time I felt like maybe, just maybe, things could change. That night, lying on the pull-out couch and staring at the ceiling, my mind replayed everything that had gone down. In just under 2 weeks, my whole world had flipped. I'd lost my home, found a lifeline in Aunt Bonnie, and somehow landed in this weird new situation with my parents. Kayla came out of the room and sat on the edge of the couch. "Can't sleep?" I asked. She shook her head. "Too much going on up here." She tapped her temple. "Lila, do you think I should give him another chance?" I sat up. "That's your choice. They're still our parents, for better or worse." "I'm scared they'll go back to how they were," she admitted. "That they'll start pushing about the baby or treat you like crap again." "Probably," I said honestly. "People don't change overnight. But now we've got Aunt Bonnie, and we've got each other." Kayla smiled faintly. "We've always had each other." She hesitated, then said quietly, "I think I want to keep the baby. Is that crazy?" I reached over and squeezed her hand. "Not crazy. Scary, yeah, but you'll be a great mom. Better than ours, at least," Kayla said with a sharp little laugh. Sitting there in the dark, I realized something real. No matter what our parents did, whether they meant it or faked it, we'd be fine. We'd made it through worse, and we'd keep going. Together. What came next wouldn't be simple. Kayla's pregnancy, my uncertain future, our messed up family ties. But for the first time, it didn't feel like we were in it alone. The next morning, I woke up feeling this strange mix of hope and worry. Kayla was curled beside me, still asleep, one hand resting protectively on her flat stomach. I got up quietly and found Aunt Bonnie in the kitchen flipping pancakes. "Morning," she said, sliding a plate my way. "Sleep okay?" "Yeah, kinda," I said, drowning them in syrup. "Kayla told me she wants to keep the baby." Aunt Bonnie nodded, unfazed. I figured. That girl's always had a caretaker's heart. She sat across from me, How's it feel about to be an aunt? I shrugged. Weird. Good though. We ate in easy silence until Kayla wandered in, hair sticking up everywhere. Aunt Bonnie just handed her a plate. No words needed. So what now? I asked after we finished eating. Now, Aunt Bonnie said, we make a plan. Kayla's gotta finish school. You both need some stability. And your parents? They've got to prove they actually mean to change. Kayla stared at her empty plate, thinking, I guess I should talk to Tyler too. He deserves to know what I'm deciding. That talk happened later that day, when Tyler showed up looking nervous, probably thinking Aunt Bonnie was going to chew him out. Instead, she handed him a glass of lemonade and gave them space to talk in the bedroom while I pretended not to listen from the hallway. I couldn't catch every word, but his reaction surprised me. No excuses, no arguing, just stuff like, whatever you need and I'll be there. When they finally came out an hour later, Kayla looked calmer, and Tyler looked serious, still scared but solid. I'll tell my parents tonight, he said before leaving. They'll freak out, but they believe in doing the right thing. They won't let me back out. After he left, Kayla crashed next to me on the couch. Well, that went better than I thought. He seems okay, I said. He is, Kayla agreed, totally terrified but okay. The next few days blurred together with planning. Aunt Bonnie called our parents for another meeting, this time with everyone, us, Tyler, and his parents. Talk about awkward. Tyler's parents were shocked but stepped up fast, especially his mom. My parents acted polite and tense, but at least no one yelled. The adults handled all the logistics, insurance, living situations, school. I mostly sat back watching their faces. My dad kept sneaking glances at me when he thought I wasn't looking, his expression full of guilt and something I couldn't name. My mom barely looked at anyone. After that, our parents invited us over for dinner that weekend. A fresh start, my mom called it. Kayla looked right at me. Up to Lila, she said. I go where she goes. My dad nodded. Fair enough. I said okay, but only if Aunt Bonnie came too. No way was I walking into that house alone. They agreed, reluctantly. That Friday dinner was painfully awkward. My mom had clearly spent hours cooking all our favorite dishes, even getting mine right for once. The vibe was stiff, everyone overly polite. Halfway through, my dad cleared his throat. I've been reading, he said hesitantly, about colorism and how it affects kids. He looked straight at me. I never realized what I did to you, Lila. I'm not asking for forgiveness, just a chance to do better. I almost choked on my mashed potatoes. My dad, reading about colorism, admitting he was wrong. I didn't even know how to respond, so I just nodded. My mom jumped in next. We've also found a family therapist, she said. For all of us, if you girls are willing, we have a lot to work through. I glanced at Kayla. She lifted her brows like, what do you think? Maybe, I said carefully. We'll think about it. After dinner, my dad awkwardly led me to my old room, except it wasn't my old room anymore. They totally redone it. Fresh paint, new furniture, even a sleek desk for studying. It looked good, way nicer than what I'd had before. We thought, if you wanted to come back. He drifted off. I don't know yet, I said honestly. This is all happening really fast. He nodded. I understand. The room's yours whenever you want it. No pressure. That night, back at Aunt Bonnie's, Kayla and I stayed up late talking. She was torn about moving back home. On one hand, they were being surprisingly supportive about the baby now. On the other, we both knew how fast they could flip. What do you think? She asked me. Should we give them another chance? I sighed. I don't know. Part of me wants to believe they've changed. Another part is waiting for them to go back to normal. Same, Kayla admitted. But I also feel bad about leaning on Aunt Bonnie. Her apartment's tiny for 3 people, let alone 4 once the baby comes. That was a solid point. Aunt Bonnie had been incredible, but this wasn't a long-term fix. We decided to talk to Aunt Bonnie about it in the morning. When we brought it up over breakfast, she surprised us. I've actually been thinking about this, she said. I've been browsing 3-bedroom places, more space for all of us. You want us to stay with you permanently? Kayla asked, shocked. Aunt Bonnie shrugged. If that's what you want, or you could try going home, with the understanding that my door is always open if things don't work out. We talked it through for hours. By the end, we had a plan. Kayla and I would move back home on a trial run. We'd attend family therapy. We'd spend weekends with Aunt Bonnie. And at the first sign of our parents slipping into their old ways, we'd bounce. Moving back was weird. My parents were trying so hard it was almost awkward. My dad kept asking about my schoolwork and offering to help. My mom suddenly wanted to know about my friends and interests. They both fussed over Kayla, making sure she ate right and got enough rest. Family therapy was even stranger. Our therapist, Dr. Chun, didn't let anyone slide on anything. When my dad tried to downplay some of the things he'd done, she called him out right away. When my mom broke down about how tough everything was for her, Dr. Chin reminded her that it had been even tougher for me. The real breakthrough happened about a month later when we started talking about birthdays. How they always went all out for Kayla's but completely skipped mine. My mom rolled out her usual excuses about being busy or low on cash. That doesn't explain the pattern, Dr. Chen said evenly. Why was there always money for Kayla's birthday, but never for Lila's? My mom froze. Then, out of nowhere, she turned to me with tears in her eyes and said, "Because I'm racist. I didn't want to face it, even to myself. But I treated you differently because you look more black. And that's unforgivable." The air just vanished from the room. My dad looked shell-shocked. Kayla reached over and grabbed my hand. "I don't know if it's unforgivable," I said quietly, "but it really messed me up." My mom nodded, crying harder now. "I know, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it right, if you'll let me." It wasn't like everything magically got fixed. There were still awkward moments, times when they fell back into old patterns and I had to call them out. But that moment was the first time I thought maybe, just maybe, they could change. Meanwhile, Kayla's pregnancy was moving along. Her first ultrasound felt huge. We all went, even Tyler. Seeing that tiny blur on the screen made it real. Kayla started crying. Tyler looked freaked out, but kept holding her hand. My parents hovered in the back until the tech asked if they wanted to see their grandkid. After that, my mom wouldn't stop talking about baby stuff. By the time Kayla started showing, we'd found a new rhythm. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. My parents were putting in effort. I was slowly letting my guard down. Kayla looked radiant, even with the nausea and swollen feet. We still spent every other weekend at Aunt Bonnie's. Those weekends were my favorite, just the three of us watching movies, talking about everything and nothing. Aunt Bonnie never judged our parents, just listened and gave advice when we wanted it. One Saturday, while we were watching TV, Kayla suddenly grabbed her belly. My heart stopped until she laughed. "The baby's kicking," she said, grinning. "Here, feel." She grabbed my hand and put it on her bump. Sure enough, a little kick pressed against my palm. It was the strangest, most amazing thing I'd ever felt. "Hey in there," I said to her belly. "I'm your Aunt Lila. Can't wait to meet you." Kayla's smile nearly split her face. "I found out yesterday," she said. "It's a girl and niece. I was going to be an aunt." Somehow that made everything hit different. "Have you thought about names?" Aunt Bonnie asked. Kayla nodded. "I like Bonnie Lila Williams," she said, glancing up shyly. "After my two favorite people." I didn't cry. Totally didn't. Okay, maybe a little. When we told our parents the baby's name, my mom actually hugged me. Not one of her awkward half hugs, but a real one. "She'll be lucky to have you as her aunt," she said quietly. The months flew. Kayla wrapped up her first semester at community college with solid grades, considering everything. Tyler picked up a part-time gig and saved every dollar for the baby. My parents turned their home office into a nursery, painting it yellow because Kayla refused pink. Aunt Bonnie knitted enough blankets for a zombie apocalypse. I stayed focused on school too, and pulled straight A's my senior year. When college acceptance letters came in, my parents were actually thrilled. They even threw me a small party when I got into my top choice, the first real celebration they'd ever given me. It felt amazing and a little unreal. Kayla's water broke 2 weeks early, right in the middle of my graduation ceremony. One minute I was getting my diploma, the next my dad was waving like crazy from the crowd. We bolted to the hospital, me still in my cap and gown. Labor dragged on. 16 hours of Kayla crying, yelling, and swearing Tyler would never touch her again. We all took shifts by her side. Me, my parents, Tyler, his folks, Aunt Bonnie. By hour 15, we were dead on our feet. Then suddenly it was go time. The doctor told Kayla to push, and a few minutes later, this tiny, crying human landed on her chest. Bonnie Lila Williams, 6 pounds 7 ounces of perfect. She had Kayla's nose, Tyler's chin, and skin right in between. My parents cried holding her. So did Aunt Bonnie. So did I, if I'm honest. Later that night, after everyone left, it was just me and Kayla in the hospital room. She drifted off while I held baby Bonnie. "Hey there," I whispered. "You caused quite a stir, you know that. Changed everything." And she really had. Staring at her little face, I saw how much life had shifted in under a year. Kayla and I weren't just surviving anymore, we were family. My parents had gone from scary strangers to people I was slowly learning to trust. Aunt Bonnie had gone from a distant relative to one of my favorite humans. None of it was perfect. I slipped up sometimes. Family therapy was still every week. Kayla and Tyler were still figuring out co-parenting while juggling classes. I still doubted forgiveness sometimes. But looking at baby Bonnie, I knew we'd make it work. All of us. Together. As if she read my mind, Bonnie opened her eyes and stared right at me. I swear she smiled, even though I know newborns don't really smile. In that second, this wave of protectiveness hit me hard. This little girl would never feel unwanted or unloved. She'd grow up surrounded by people who adored her. A mom, grandparents, and an aunt who'd learned the hard way what family truly means. You're going to be okay, I whispered to her. We all are. If there's one thing I've learned from everything that happened, it's that family isn't about being perfect. It's about choosing to stay, to forgive, and to grow together even after everything falls apart. We all make mistakes. We all hurt each other sometimes. But love can still rebuild what was broken if we let it. Watching my niece come into this world reminded me that hope is real and second chances are possible. If you were in my place, after all that pain and change, would you open your heart again? Would you forgive and try to rebuild your family? I'd really love to hear what you think. Your stories, your thoughts, your experiences. God bless you all.